Hey, what's going on everyone? I'm Sam from Rokoko, and in today's video we're going to walk through how I made this free mocap asset pack that you can download for free right now down in the description or rokoko.com. We'll walk through how I recorded the pack, especially thinking about how to record loops, how I then went into Rokoko Studio Preview, actually made those loops, added some smoothing, then took all of that into Unreal Engine to build out this whole Star Wars inspired Darth Vader DJing scene. Again, you can download this pack for free in the description or at the free resources page on rokoko.com. And let's jump right into how I recorded these assets, and then we'll move on to making the loops and putting the scene together. I used my Smart Suit Pro 2 and my smart gloves for all these animations, and because I knew all this mocap was going to be looped in this pack, there's a couple things I did specifically when recording this motion capture in order to give me the best loops on the back end. So here you can see that I'm doing some DJing motion capture, and I'm using this desk chair as a little prop. I find that you get the best results in motion capture in general when you are using props to give yourself something to act against. Now again, because I knew that these were all going to be looped assets, one thing I'm trying to do very consciously is not move my feet. When we make this into a loop, we're going to have to take the end of the animation and loop it back around into the beginning of the animation. And if you're standing in a very different place, then you're going to get this awkward transition for the loop. It just makes it easier, and you get cleaner loops if you can keep your feet in one place. Unless you're making something like a walk cycle, and we have videos on our channel covering things like that. So let's jump to another clip. Here I am, dancing. And another thing that you'll notice about a lot of these mocap takes is that they're quite long. So about a minute to 2 minutes long. And when I'm making loops for crowds and things like that, I want each mocap take to be pretty long. The reason for that is that I can take this 70-second loop of mocap and I can put it on several characters that are all right next to each other, and I can offset the animation by 10, 15, 20 seconds on each character, and that will give you the impression of a large crowd of characters that we can create from just this one mocap take of me dancing. Here's some animation I did for a bouncer, same thing, it's quite a long take, and that way I could have two bouncers standing next to each other. It wouldn't seem like it was from the same animation, each would seem distinct and unique, and that would make the scene seem more realistic, obviously. So here's another clip I did of being the hype man for the DJ, just kind of standing next to them and pointing at things. And this will be another loop. And you can see here my timeline is a little sparse, even though I know my feet were actually in the same place for this entire clip. So these should be solid bars. Now, one thing I can do is go ahead and delete all of these different clips and basically just create, one solid bar on each of these timeline levels here. However, the timeline being as sparse as it is here is probably a result of our new locomotion engine, and we can always go into the details panel and go under legacy locomotion and turn that on to use our old locomotion engine. And then if I go and regenerate, revert to original values, basically we need to click this refresh button, and we will get our original locomotion engine's result, which is far less forgiving when it comes to foot placement, which is good if your character is standing still. However, it's not good if you're moving around and doing things that our new locomotion engine really excels in. Another tip is for this sitting motion capture. So I sat down in the chair and did some, sitting, dancing. And if you have sitting motion capture like this, one thing I like to do to make sure that I don't drift over time, as you can see my character is kind of drifting backwards over time, is go back to that details panel again, and then we actually want to turn off locomotion entirely. And this will mean my character is no longer moving in space, so this will look really awkward when I sit down in the chair, but this loop is going to be for sitting down the whole time anyway, so this gives us a much more stable positioning for our loop. So in this pack there's also an animation which is not going to be looping. It is of a character who is moving around in the crowd, just because I thought that that is also something that would be useful if I was making a club, DJ, venue environment. So in this case, our new locomotion engine really paid off because I didn't actually have to do any motion capture editing to capture this sequence. This all looks very good right out of the box. Character looks super natural. I'm moving around space. And you could also, this is also quite a long take, so you could take chunks of this, put it on different characters, and this gives you either a great POV shot of a character who's moving around in the crowd, or a great shot for something in the foreground where a character is actually transforming in space, you know, in front of the camera or something. Just another good utility dancing little animation here. We also have another crowd dancing loop that is quite long. Again, this time it has some more chill parts. So this could be for a song that is, you know, more flowy or something like that, or a more kind of chill crowd, depending on what you were looking for. And then we have another DJing set as well. And at this point, we can jump over to Rokoko Studio Preview, where we are going to actually create our different loops and add some smoothing to all of these different clips. So here I am, and I've opened up my scene in Rokoko Studio Preview that I just had open in Rokoko Studio, and we have our first clip, which is our little DJing clip. And the process of making loops out of each of these different animations is going to be pretty much the same. So let's run through the steps. The first thing I'm going to do down here is that you can see we have two tracks. We have our smoothing track and we have our looping track. And pretty much for every motion capture animation I make these days, I add smoothing. It just makes the clips look a little bit better, a little bit more professional, a little bit more AAA. And I find even if you add just a little bit, it can have a profound effect on the end result of the motion capture. So to add some smoothing, I'm going to hit plus right here. I'm just going to drag this out over my entire motion capture clip. Make sure that it covers it all the way to the end and the beginning. Over here you can see how much smoothing we can add. So 0 smoothing. Let's play this clip. It'll process for a second. This is what it looks like, raw. If we were to add 100% smoothing, it's going to look very weird and very slow, right? And that's because it is completely smoothed out. Normally what I use is around a 6. By default, it's set to 7, but with 6, I feel that we get our natural movements, but we also get a little bit of a little something that makes it look a little bit more high-end. Now that we've added smoothing, we can go and create our loop. So when I'm making a loop out of animation, I like to identify the beginning and the end of the loop. And what we're trying to do is match poses. So you can see if this is the beginning of our loop, I'll just hit a plus right here. You can see that the hands are relatively, you know, out in front of the body, legs are straight, and ideally this is where we want our animation to be at the end of our loop as well. So the actual loop from the end to the beginning is smooth. So let's expand this out and just try and go find a point where, yeah, the hands are in the middle. So this is relatively a similar pose as we had in the beginning. So I will go and move my out point right here. And at this point, I will hit apply loop magic. I'm going to make this 2 full seconds to start for transition time. Then I'll hit close loop, lock to axis, and start from origin. If we jump to the end and we watch the playhead go from the ending back to the beginning, we can see, oh, it was perfectly smooth. And that means we can have this on a DJ character in the background in our scene and never worry about any jumps in the animation or whatever it is. And we can just worry about our hero character. If we jump over to our sitting dancing animation, you can see that I've just done the same thing. I've added my smoothing and I've created a loop. And in loop magic, again, close loop, lock to axis, start from origin. It gives us this really nice, perfectly smooth loop that if we watch it go to the end of the animation, no hitches, no anything, just loops. This character can sit in the background and really just be set dressing as we build the rest of our scene, right? This is just a background NPC for any scene that's in a club. So finally, I want to look at what I did for this moving around crowd character. So I knew this wasn't going to be a perfect loop, but I still did want it to kind of like loop a little bit just to give us options later when we're using this motion capture on a character. I've added my smoothing and I've got my looping segment here, and I've applied my loop magic. I have a transition time, and the only thing I haven't done is hit close loop. So if we actually read the little tooltip here, close the loop by blending the end of the segment into the beginning so that the start and end position match. So this is the option that when you're making a walk cycle or something, for instance, is going to make it so that that character is moving in place. Now for this animation, I wanted the character to be moving around in the crowd. So we can't use close loop because I need the character translating in the scene. However, you can see here, our motion is actually looping, but we get that little jump at the end and the beginning. So this is a little bit of a middle ground. We are still looping this animation because maybe that would become useful at some point in the future. However, this character is really not intended to be a perfect loop, so there is going to be that jump at the end of the animation as it blends into the middle. And it's just a different way that you can use this apply magic loop setting in Rokoko Studio Preview. You don't necessarily need to close the loop every time. You can play with these settings to get different results. Now, when I'm ready to actually export out this motion capture, I want to export the loop, not the entire clip. So I will right click on this green segment, go to export. I'll select an FBX, default, export. And then I tend to name all of my loops with the word loop actually starting it, just makes it easier to find all of these loops. This animation was the Dancer 04 moving at the back, so it is not a perfect loop. I didn't name it to have a loop, but I would hit save if I hadn't already exported this, but I have. And at this point we can jump into Unreal Engine and actually set up a little scene. So here I am in Unreal Engine 5.6, and I have this subway station that I've set up as kind of a little DJ nightclub venue. So we have our dance floor, we've got our DJ station, and we just need to import our motion capture. So to do that, I've got this Mocap folder. I'm going to go to add, import to current folder. We've got all of our motion capture files right here. And before I import anything, I'm going to go to the drop down menu and I'm going to go and select FBX animation because I need to import this motion capture a specific way, and if you don't have FBX animation selected, it will use the default importer, which might screw up some of your motion capture data. Now I could select all of these, but that will bring them all in on their own different skeletons, and I want them all to be associated with a single skeleton. So I'm going to actually only bring in one of the animations to start. And you can see skeleton is empty, but we're going to have import animations. And I'm going to import all, ignore those errors, and you can see that we have our motion capture animation here. Everything looks good. Now to get the rest of the animations, I'm going to go back to add, import to current folder. Again, make sure that FBX animation is selected in this drop down, and then select all the rest of the mocap that I did, and I'll hit open. And you can see that I have my old motion capture. You know, this skeleton from that we just imported is loaded into here, which is what I actually want. And then I will hit import all, and now all of the motion capture will be associated with the same skeleton. The advantage of them all being associated with the same skeleton will become clear when we start putting this motion capture on two characters. If I want to just do some previs or something, what's great is at this point I can just start dragging this into my scene. And the way that I use loops in Unreal Engine typically is that I will take one loop that is, animation. So if I double click this animation sequence, you can see that it's playing. And once I drag it into my scene, as soon as I hit play in my editor or Alt S to start the player, our animation will just start. And what I like to do is build up the scene with all of my background characters using loops like this. And that way, as soon as I hit start in my editor, all of these characters will suddenly be moving. And if I want to have another character next to this character, what I can do is grab my character here, hold down Alt, drag out another copy, and then I'll go to the skeletal mesh component, and you can see we have this initial position field. And if I change this, this is in seconds. So 46-second animation, I could change this to 17 seconds later. And now, even though this is the same animation, you're never gonna notice that this is the exact same clip because they're separated by 17 seconds. They're both gonna loop infinitely. And at this point, you know, it really becomes easy to start. Hold down Alt while I'm rotating them, just filling out my scene with little characters. And if I didn't want these guys, you know, because at this point, this guy and this guy are going to be mirroring each other and in sync. So I could go in and maybe change this by 4 seconds and then change this one by, I don't know, 10 seconds. And now we've got 4 characters that look distinct and are all doing different motions at different times. And this way we can start to really build up a crowd in this arena. So obviously, as you saw at the beginning, I decided to bring in some stormtroopers and Darth Vader and make a little Star Wars inspired club scene. How do we go ahead and retarget this animation onto some stormtroopers and start building out a little crowd? So I'm going to start with my Loop Dancer 01, go find the anim. I'm going to go right click on it, and again, if we double click it, just left click on it, we can see we have a loop that is 73 seconds long. Right click on that loop, retarget animations. Under target skeletal mesh, I'm going to search for my stormtrooper character here. Because we associated all of that motion capture with the same skeleton, you can see that we have all of these different options. We don't have to, even though we clicked on Loop Dancer 01 anim, if we wanted to do 2, we could export 2. Oh, this is Bouncer actually, so 2, we could do 2. Sitting, we can export any of those animations now. However, we're gonna do our Loop Dancer 01, and I can either export the animations, or I can export the retarget assets. Let's go ahead and export the retarget assets. Then I'll export animation as well, because why not? So at this point, we have both our retarget assets right here, and here's our retargeter down here, and we actually have our animation. So we could just drag this character out into the scene. When we hit play, Alt-S, we will get our stormtrooper to start dancing, and we could go and copy this trooper, and again, change the offset so that they aren't doing the exact same mocap motions. Do it again, change the offset, and really just start building out a crowd of these stormtroopers. Now, the reason I exported out those retargeting assets, including this retargeter, is because in here, if we open this up, we can go through, and because, again, all of our mocap animations are associated with the same skeleton, we have every option here, and we can preview all the different types. But if we needed to do some sort of broad level mocap editing of all of our mocap on this one character, I could go up here to edit retarget pose, and then let's say I wanted to change the way the upper arm was, let's say 10 degrees up, so that we don't get clipping on the sides of our stormtrooper. And then we hit play, and we're not going to have any clipping when our character's arms are down anymore. So we can do some broad level fixes, and then we could export all of the different dancing animations for our stormtrooper, which in this case is going to be Loop Dancer 01, Loop Dancer 03, Loop Dancer 04 sitting, Loop Dancer 5, the moving around one, and the drinking one. So we can export all of these mocap animations all at once into our folder, and they're all gonna possess any of those edits that we created. So we've got our sitting trooper now here instead, that we could do the exact same thing that we did at the beginning and build our little scene. So let's fast forward a little bit through building the entire scene. Here we have our entire scene completely filled out with characters. We've got all of our stormtroopers. We've got Darth Vader. We've got our Palpatine hype man. We've also got, you can't even see it, standing in a little sign here. But we've got some bouncers that if we go to unlit, you can kind of see standing here. And of course, when we hit Alt S or play in our viewer, we have all of these characters just moving in the scene. And this took me, less than an hour to set all of this up, because I could just copy and paste all these different troopers, offset the timings a little bit, then copy big chunks of them to fill out the space. And what's really cool about having this all set up in this way is that at this point, we just get to start having fun. So if I create a new camera, let's say, and then we jump into our camera, we can start just trying to get some cool different shots and playing around and getting different things with the scene. We'll adjust our focus. Let's change our focal length to like a 90 millimeter lens. Does this look cool? Ooh, we got some foreground stuff. Okay, maybe we want to change the aperture so that it's a little bit more shallow. We've got Vader. Oh, and what's also really cool is we can get some happy accidents. Just as we're moving around the scene, we might, this is kind of cool, underneath the table or something, and we can see the troopers through the wires. This is the sort of thing that Unreal Engine really excels at. Doing things where you're just finding happy accidents because everything is running in real time, and we're able to just set up the scene so that it's all working in the background. There's a lot of Unreal cinematic artists that work in this way by setting up scenes and basically using all of the actions of the scene as just set dressing, as environmental design. So you set it all up, and then the real fun begins when you start placing in cameras, you start placing in different lights that you might want, that you might get different effects from, maybe I want to have this red light, on this trooper. This is where Unreal Engine really shines, doing things in real time and playing with all these different ideas in ways that give you really incredible end results. So, of course, I rendered out a bunch of these different camera angles, and you can see that this is the final result. I took it into After Effects and added some post-processing effects, some noise, just to make it seem like one of those gritty 90s style underground rave videos. And this was all created using this motion capture pack, which can be found for free at our free resources page or down in the description below. So that is the whole process of making this mocap pack for you all, which again, you can download down in the description below or at the free resources page on Rokoko.com. This felt like a great way to show off how we go about actually recording motion capture using the Rokoko ecosystem, turning that mocap into loops before getting it into whatever 3D program you might be working in. We have a lot of really cool updates coming soon, so stay tuned to the channel and to our Instagram, and if you have any questions, put them down in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. Okay, have a good one everyone. See you in the next video.